Inference Plus Story Short number 27, Series B. When Dave sat up and opened his eyes, he knew immediately that he was dead. There was no cloudy moment of confusion, no dramatic epiphany, just a bland knowledge that he had died. The whole thing was decidedly lacking in drama. Apparently, the people who made blockbuster movies had never actually experienced the afterlife. He didn't feel especially different than he had when he was alive, a development that was either reassuring or disappointing, depending on how he looked at it. The room in which he sat reminded him a lot of his cubicle at the call center, except it was a lot quieter and had two identical doors side by side against one of the white walls. The entrance to his cubicle had just been an opening where two of the flimsy, cloth-covered dividers came together. Perhaps being dead was an improvement in his fortunes. "Hey, Dave! Long time no see!" A familiar voice boomed behind him, causing him to startle. He noticed that his heart didn't speed up, which made sense given his new circumstances. Dave turned and was immediately, and awkwardly, engulfed in a bear hug by a giant of a man who bore an uncanny resemblance to Brian Murphy from the billing department. "Brian?" Dave asked, squirming out of the other man's embrace. "Brian Murphy? What are you doing here? Aren't you dead?" He realized the stupidity of his observation as soon as the words left his mouth. "Well, yeah," Brian said. "Heart attack. Just like you, twinsies. Should have been taking those beta blockers, eh, Davy boy?" They could not have been less twinsies if one had been a fish and the other a hot air balloon. "Hindsight is 20/20, Dave said dryly. "I guess I should ask, why you? Why are you the one meeting me here?" "Righto, cheerio," Brian confirmed. "Might as well get down to brass tacks. You know anything about David Hawkins?" Dave stared at him blankly. "Gonna take that look as a no," Brian snorted. "I'm not judging. I never heard of him before I got here either. He was a psychiatrist, wrote a bunch of books a few years back, pretty deep stuff about human consciousness and spirituality and the human experience. I won't bore you with too many details. If you feel like reading up, you'll certainly have the time. The gist of it all was this. You give yourself the life you think you deserve." "So I guess Dave paused, considering. "Had the life I thought I deserved?" "Something like that," Brian agreed. "And now you have to make a choice about what you're going to do next. Pick a door." Dave regarded the doors, but did not move towards either. "It feels like there's a catch," Dave said. "What's behind each one?" "Couldn't tell you," Brian said without a hint of irony. "You tell me what's behind them." "But I don't know what's behind them," Dave said, annoyed. "Can I look first?" "Nope, no can do. Whatever you open, that's the one you choose. No returns." Brian laughed. "Get it? No returns?" Dave did get it. He just wasn't as amused by the joke as Brian seemed to be. He was starting to remember why he hadn't liked Brian Murphy very much when they were both still alive. Always one of those pain-in-the-ass answers a question with a question guys. A Reader's Digest version of Confucius. "I guess that you being here means that you are what I think I deserve?" The thought was mildly offensive to him. His mother is third-grade teacher, his black lab that was hit by a car. Surely he deserved better than Brian. "Looks like it," Brian said, shrugging. "And I'm here because talking to you was what I felt like I deserved." Serendipitous, right? "Back to the doors," Dave said. "Oh, sure, no problem," Brian said. "You just pick one, that's about it." "That's it?" Brian shrugged. "But how do you know? How do you know which one?" "Hawkins said you get the love you think you deserve," Brian said. "Whichever one you go with, you get what you think you're supposed to get. That's about the speed of it." "I've led a decent life," Dave said, indignant. "I don't know why I wouldn't get a very nice afterlife. Heaven with angels." "Sounds like you got it figured out," Brian said. "Bon voyage." But there were times when Dave knew he hadn't exactly led a decent life. He'd banged up that girl's car in the grocery store parking lot that one time. Thank God that was before there were security cameras every 20 feet. And he cheated on Steph a couple of times, but he felt bad about it and didn't make it an ongoing thing. It occurred to him that this might be a little more complicated than he'd first made out. He tutored disadvantaged kids at the Y twice a week for 10 years. He stole $2,000 from his mom's secret cookie jar one time when Steph was on maternity leave and money was tight, then let her think the neighbor kid must have snuck in and taken it while she was at book club. He quietly replaced the money later when they were back on their feet. Now that he was being totally honest with himself, he had to admit that the scales tipped out pretty close to 50-50 on the good-bad thing. He regarded the doors with a mounting sense of uncertainty. "Only you really know what you deserve," Brian offered unhelpfully. The guy was a regular fortune cookie of wisdom. If Dave flipped him over, he'd probably find 5 lucky numbers stamped on his ass. "You can take as long as you need. I don't have any place else to be." "What did you do when you were in my position?" "Wasn't the same for me. There was a train or a bus. I took the train. Easy choice if you ask me." "And do you feel like you made the right choice? Do you feel like it's the afterlife you deserve?" Brian gave a non-committal shrug. It was the relaxed gesture of a man unburdened by a crisis of conscience. Dave envied him. "I've never been much of a philosopher," Brian replied. "Not a deep thinker like you. Try not to worry so much. It'll all work out in the end."